What's up, guys? Today on the podcast, we have the guys from Grapplers Against Violence. There's a couple audio issues with the recording here, but I think it'll be pretty listenable still. We covered a lot of good topics and just overall had a really fun time chatting, so make sure to check it out. I think you guys will enjoy it. Hey guys, welcome to the NSBJJ podcast. Definitely not take two. So today I've got here Grapplers Against Violence. I got Andrew and Brandon, the founders of it. How's it going, guys?
Good, man.
Good.
All right, so why don't you guys tell me about Grapplers Against Violence? Basically, tell me as if I was someone who had never heard of it before.
So how I would explain it to someone is we're a brand, I would say, and a cause. What we'd like to promote is kind of the positive aspects of grappling. And we like to really preach about mental health because it's been a big part of our life. And we also like to kind of show that martial arts, like I think when you look at UFC and the MMA, a lot of people view martial arts as like violence and the blood and kind of the rock and roll type lifestyle, the stare downs and all that. But often if you go and join a gym and you meet a martial artist, particularly grapplers, I find you're surprised by like the humbleness that people have, and often the people that you meet in gyms I find they can be broken people who this has been a really good outlet for them to kind of deal with things in life. That's certainly been the case for my brother and I would say. So we kind of want to promote that. We want to promote the benefits that martial arts and grappling can be for somebody's mental health, for the well-being, self-defense. Me personally speaking, I work in law enforcement, so I kind of promote for like law enforcement folk and military to try to get on the mats because it's a really good way to cope with the stresses of the job, but also for your personal safety. And if you vow to protect other people, I think it's definitely important for you to be well versed in that. So yeah, like we're not here to make money or anything, but we are a brand. You know, we'll sell apparel and rash guards. We had our event there in March, I believe.
By the way, I just want to say, guys, their rash guards are super high quality. Most of the guys at the gym have them, and I think it's probably my favorite rash guard to wear. I've got the short sleeve one. I've been wearing it, pretty often for Nogi since I got it, and it hasn't even started to fray yet.
Yeah,
so
man, they look slick, man. We're happy with them.
Yeah.
They're pretty like conservative, like they're not the flashiest things, but I think they get the message across, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're two guys. We're just learning the sport, and we're gonna try to grow grapplers as we kind of grow in the sport as well. But yeah, that's kind of a broad description, I would say, of it.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing too, because I think you see a lot of times companies in jiu-jitsu are created by, like brown belts, black belts, people who've been in the sport for a long time. So it's really cool to see something come from guys that are not nearly as experienced, right? Mm-hmm. Guys that are around blue belt, because I think it's interesting to get that perspective, right? Like a lot of people start rash guard companies, Inverted Gear Nelson started as I think a brown belt with his gi company. So it's really cool to get that kind of refreshing take from people that you guys have unique experiences. You being in law enforcement definitely, is an interesting. It's something that I've always found interesting, right?
Yeah.
I always love, we always talk about training jiu-jitsu for law enforcement and what that entails. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think it goes to show as well how big of an impact a sport like this can have so early. Like you don't need to be a purple belt, brown belt, black belt to get the benefits of this.
Exactly.
I think like in the early days of grapplers, like I would say even 6 months before anyone's heard of it, me and Andrew were talking about it. We were both I think white belts at the time.
Yeah.
Like that would have been the spring and you got your blue belt.
Yeah.
That following summer.
Yeah, that's right.
And, like it was in the early stages. I remember that day clearly
Mm-hmm.
when I was at work, and you texted me, and I was like, I am so on board with this.
Yeah. No, I was driving.
Yeah.
I was driving up to Kingston with my father. He was dropping me off because I had to go to Kingston, Ontario for the summer, last summer to train for the government anyway for my job, and like it was a 14-hour drive just driving. So I was thinking about jiu-jitsu, thinking about stuff I'd like to do, and then shot him a message kind of thing and talked about it a bit, and then I made the Instagram that day, and then, you know, we just kind of promoted every now and then. We were both kind of busy during that summer.
For sure.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, when the situation with our dad happened, that kind of gave us a real big motivator to really kick things off. And I think that he's definitely a reason behind, you know, opening it up and trying to spread.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask this a little later, but it's a good time to ask it now. Did you guys expect Grapplers to be anywhere close to as big as it is? Because, I mean, you guys have had rash guard orders, like, all around the world. You know, you guys were on the Tap Cancer Out podcast. Yeah. You know, you've been featured in, I know of at least, you know, one big jiu-jitsu article that covered you guys. What's that been like for you guys to just go from, you know, white belt and the blue belt that just started this out of your own, you know, because of your own experiences, and have really kind of seen the support that you guys have gotten all over the world?
It's been crazy, really. Like, you start off, the intentions are always good, and you always have big plans, but you never really know where things are going to go. But then as things develop and you start putting products out and word spreads, like, you never really expect what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But when something like that does happen, it's always super awesome. Like, the Tap Cancer podcast was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That was really cool, and we've been super happy with the rash guard orders, and they've been a big success so far. Everyone's loving them. So we just want to keep going from there. Like,
it's really cool.
And stuff going, hats. Like, we want to get a bunch of apparel out.
It's really cool to get to a tournament and you just see, like, oh yeah, they do have a rash there. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's like, it's cool. I think like I said, we're not really doing it for money or any type of fame or anything like that. But when you see somebody and on their backs as Grapplers Against Violence, it's a good feeling for sure.
Yeah.
Again, we're just trying to spread a positive message, and it seems like that's kind of catching on. And I think a lot of people have, whether they have similar experiences to us or not, I think everybody knows of something or somebody,
Absolutely,
you know, that can kind of touch them. So, yeah, no, we're super happy about it.
Jump on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
really easy to...
you know, for me, it's one of those things my entire life, never crippling, but I've always struggled with anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And jiu-jitsu is something that, you know, I mean, I'm a coach now, you know, I teach kids, I teach adults. It's something that you never would have thought I'd be doing
for sure
6 years ago,
mm-hmm.
But it's something that, you know, I couldn't go without now.
100%.
So why don't you guys tell me about your start in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I started a little over 3 years ago now, I think. My cousin, her boyfriend, Rob, he was affiliated with Forza.
Yep.
He's a purple belt there. Anyway, I was kind of shooting my cousin messages. I was really at a point in my life where I was kind of looking for something to get me out of the house. And just out of the blue, I ended up going one night. I started with Muay Thai at Forza. That was for probably the first, 8 months. And then the black belt there at the time for jiu-jitsu, Giuliano, he kind of convinced me to start grappling, and this was around a time that he was training for a super fight in Ontario.
Yep.
So we would be going for runs and then hitting the bag, and then they would be rolling. A few of the guys who've been doing it for a while would be rolling, and I would just be there kind of learning shrimps and just the very basic stuff. And I hated the gi. I found it so warm and uncomfortable. And I was like, man, I can't see myself really doing this. And I was getting tap. And I was like, man, this sucks. But anyway, 3 months after doing it, I competed and I just got annihilated, obviously. But after that, I was like, man, I kind of like this. So then I just kind of...
The seeds start getting planted.
Yeah, the Muay Thai started to fade for me a bit. And I was just grappling a lot more. And now I do 99% jiu-jitsu, and so that was my start.
I can't remember the last time I saw you throw a pair of gloves on personally.
Yeah, man, it's been a while.
I feel like everyone starts with Muay Thai, and then
everyone starts around here. Yeah, everyone starts with Muay Thai, and then they get into jiu-jitsu, and then the Muay Thai goes bye-bye.
Doesn't know how to throw a punch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a weird feeling, man. It's talked about all the time, but someone grabs a hold of you, before you grapple, you're like, oh, I'll just do this, man. It's I just put him in a headlock kind of thing, use strength, but then, you roll with, a purple belt or something, and someone has been doing it for a while, and you're like, whoa.
Welcome to the planet.
That doesn't stop, by the way. We just had an Atos black belt in for the last week, and then we had Roger Hollidan, who used to be with us all the time before that. And yeah, I can tell you that doesn't stop. I got ragdolled this whole week.
It's nuts, man. But yeah, no, Brandon started after me.
Yeah, I started basically after months of Andrew nagging, and I don't know. I played hockey my whole life, so this was a whole new world for me. It's just something I never thought about or looked into, but like anyone, I guess, I started with Muay Thai. I did Muay Thai for, I don't know, it was only 2 months probably. And then I remember watching a jiu-jitsu tournament. I was like, all right, here we go. Like, this is a whole different, this is a whole different ballgame now. So I think that tournament was on Saturday, Monday. I started jiu-jitsu, and I don't think I put on a pair of gloves since.
Yeah,
God,
I haven't seen it either.
No.
It's interesting that, for you, Andrew, you started jiu-jitsu, and then where you really fell in love with it was the tournament, whereas for you, Brandon, it was more, you watched the tournament, and you were like, I gotta do this, right?
I didn't know about this,
Yeah, because I know for me, and it's funny you mentioned, Andrew would always come home and nag you about starting, because it was the same for me, right? Like my brother started, a couple years before I did. That's one of the big reasons he can completely whip my ass. But I'd always I'd stay home. I didn't have any interest in it, and he'd always come home and be like, man, this jiu-jitsu thing's so cool, this Muay Thai thing's so cool, you should come try it. I'm like, no, I don't want to try it. Finally, I started it. Basically got peer pressured in at my mom's birthday dinner the one night where Peter was there and was like, come try, do a private class, right? And then from there, I mean, even then it was like pulling teeth to get me into jiu-jitsu from Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like I'll do Muay Thai for cardio, but jiu-jitsu's where I live.
It's just like, okay, like training Muay Thai is good, but at the same time, it's like I could be training jiu-jitsu.
That's where I'm
exactly.
at. I love hitting the bag. I think it's a real good stress reliever, but every time I'm doing it, I'm like, man, I could be drilling right now. I'll think of that time that like this guy caught me in something, and I was like, man, that was slick.
Exactly.
So,
because I know both of you, like, I train with you guys all the time, especially Andrew when you're in town. What point of white belt did you guys really feel that you went from, like you said, like, man, I'm getting tapped out all the time, this sucks, to like, man, I'm getting tapped out all the time, this is awesome, right? Where you kind of realize, like, getting tapped is a big part of jiu-jitsu, and it's good. It means that you're training with the right people. It means that you're taking risks. Like, when do you have a moment in your mind where that clicked for you?
It's tough to pinpoint an exact moment, but for sure, like when new guys join behind you and like you're just getting beat up all the time, and then you roll with the guy who's real fresh, and you're like, oh, I actually have picked up some of this stuff. But I find with jiu-jitsu, like so far, like I'm finding the more that I'm learning, the more I'm realizing I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the motivator. Like, all right, I might as well be day one compared to some people. Yeah. So like, it's just a motivator to keep going. Like, yes, if nobody's ever trained before, you can beat them up easily with using whatever, but just kind of the game, man, just chasing people and trying to get better each day. But it's tough to pinpoint an exact moment, but it started getting fun when you weren't the absolute worst in the class.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Like, it's hard to pinpoint that exact moment, but I mean, it's a journey and it's a process. So like, early on,
it is
like,
absolutely.
Early on, I was like, okay, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. So it's like, all right, I'm getting eaten up by everybody. So it's like, let's take small wins. Let's get tapped. Okay, now we're getting tapped 5 times against this guy. Okay, next time we roll, let's get tapped 4 times.
Yeah.
Let's work on our defense. Then it gets down to 1. You're like, okay, we're making progress this way. Now we progress other ways. So you got to take small victories because it can be discouraging at first. But I mean, that's the whole. You got to love the whole process.
Absolutely.
I like before it's really hard not to compare yourself when you start. You're comparing yourself to the 4th stripe white belt. Or you're like, oh man, I want to get to that point. Yeah. And then you're comparing yourself to the blue belt. You're comparing yourself to Graham, who's doing whatever he wants to anybody, right? But I find like what's helped me, like with my confidence, is like compare yourself to somebody who's never grappled a day in your life. Like you're gonna handle that person easily. So like that's a non-issue now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly. You get to a point where you're like, all right, if there's an altercation with somebody who's never trained and they're your size, like you're probably gonna be all right. But like it's when you're like comparing yourself to people who are just way better, you're never gonna feel good about your game. So my secret is like, all right, compare yourself to just somebody who doesn't know anything, and then you're pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So it's like you mentioned there, right? When you got your blue belt, Andrew, and I have a similar question for you, Brandon, after this. Did you feel like, because I know, like for me, I kind of felt this way, and I know that a lot of people say this, like when they get their blue belt, obviously, like you think, like in the back of your mind, you know, it's like I'm gonna be just as good as the day prior, but like maybe I will get magic powers when I get this belt.
Mm-hmm.
So like you put it on, and then all the white belts start coming at you because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to tap blue belt out, and then all the higher belts start coming at you because the kid gloves come off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that was really your experience?
It's weird. Like you would expect. I think most people would expect like more pressure because you do kind of
Yeah.
have a target on your back from the lower belts and stuff. But for me, it was kind of like, oh, now I can stop worrying about getting promoted. I
Yeah.
got the blue belts. So like, all right, I'm cool now. Like I can just train.
Yep.
Like I don't gonna be thinking about this belt.
That's
this,
how I felt when I
you
got
know,
the
like
purple
this
belt,
non.
absolutely.
It's just material. Like the real meat is what you can actually do when you're rolling with somebody. So once I got that, it was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
worrying about this whole belt thing, and like I'm just gonna try to get real good now.
Yeah,
you know, it's kind
exactly.
of like when you're a white belt, of course you're gonna be chasing that first promotion. Every stripe you get is really cool. Now, like once I got my blue belt, I'm like, I don't really care about stripes. Like I could be a blue belt for the next 5 years, and I'd be perfectly cool
Yeah,
with it
and blue belt's a long road
for
too.
sure. So that's it's kind of counterintuitive. That's the way I felt when I got
Yeah.
my blue belt.
Awesome. So Brandon, a similar question to that. So obviously, like you're a 4-stripe white belt,
Yeah.
and by the way, guys, it's no hidden secret that he's not 4-stripe white belt level. So as a 4-stripe white belt, that's not really a 4-stripe white belt, and is more a blue belt. Do you find that because you still have that 4-stripe white belt on your waist, when you roll with, the white belts that you know and they know that you're good, do they roll a little harder with you than you think that they normally would, just because?
Got that target.
Yeah, you got that target. Like he's still a white belt, but everyone knows he's good, so I gotta tap him out.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, yeah, I'm the highest ranked white belt at the gym now.
Yep,
I
you
guess.
are definitely.
So obviously, like I remember when Carlson came, and he gave me the 2 stripes, and
Yep.
Kelvy and Graham were there, and Kelvy, like they both gave me a dap, and Kelvy was like you're the leader now, like
Yeah.
lead these guys, kind of thing. So that was cool. So that's kind of how I've felt in that role, per se. But I feel like everyone who rolls hard in our gym anyway, like you guys,
Yeah,
I mean,
we
we have great roles all
Yeah.
the time. So like I haven't noticed anything like per se like attacking me, like okay, like I gotta get Brandon, like blah blah. But I just know that like everyone rolls hard, and I'm happy to have that. It's like, all right, push me
Yep.
to my next level, and I'll help get you to yours. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how it is. I haven't noticed anyone like turn it on even more. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
I find everyone just turning it on all the time anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, we definitely have like a really good core guys who train a really unique range of like skill levels.
Yeah,
But, like,
absolutely.
Like I'll roll with Graham, I'll roll with Kelvy, I'll roll with you, Pat, and like you guys are unbelievable, obviously, and you beat me up real good. But like I've seen some of the stuff you've done before. You know what I mean? You, Brandon,
Oh.
your game is real different. I find. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I know you do a lot of studying. Like you follow a lot of like the 10th Planet stuff. You do a lot of YouTube stuff, and it's just you're very unorthodox. I find.
I love it.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, because that's the thing, right? Like I remember in the winter when I had I had my first super fight in March this year, and I remember I had a whole like 5-week training camp for it, and I remember a large part of that training camp was Brandon and myself in no-gi stuff during gi class, repping leg locks, repping heel hooks, things like
Yeah.
that, because I don't do very much no-gi, and you have a very unorthodox style. The guy I
Very.
was going against has a pretty unorthodox style.
Yeah.
And I know, again, I'm generally pretty I don't like going for leg locks against most white belts, but it was really nice to have someone like, I really like grabbed you and I was like, okay, we're going to work leg locks now because I know that's a big part of your game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is leg locks, and I remember,
So
you know,
annoying.
we had that local tournament. We had a Baya this year, and I remember like the second I told you that you could do banana splits, the look on your face like, oh man, this is awesome now.
That's my A game.
Yeah.
I find with our
Exactly.
roles, Brandon, like I'll dominate position wise for like maybe 80% of the match sometimes, but you tap me far more often than I tap you because you're so unorthodox. Like you just need the smallest little bite on something, and really leave me scrambling. Like I find like Pat mentioned earlier, you can really get under people, and like you shift your hips really well. You get really good dexterity in your legs. But I find like you just find stuff like random stuff
Give
like
Brandon an inch, he takes him off.
Yeah, you've got a really good game for like no-gi submission.
yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
right?
And
Yeah,
that's, I mean, I love gi, but I love the fast-paced,
Yeah.
sub-only grind of no-gi. But that's also, like, I mean, I'm a member of 10th Planet,
Yeah.
like, online. Like, I watched all Eddie's videos. Geo and Boogie are, like, two of my biggest
Yeah.
idols that I follow. Like, so I try and take from their games and
Mhm.
directly apply it to
Yeah.
everything I do, so.
So that's actually a good point. That's something I wanted to mention and it's something I feel like we actually have really, really well in our gym. We have a good diverse like styles in all of our guys. But I know a lot of gyms, they really kind of frown upon like, you know, okay, you're going to go learn what we're teaching and you're going to have our style of jiu-jitsu and, you know, like, yeah, Gracie Baja, not to name drop anything. But you know, they're really adamant of this is our style of jiu-jitsu. It's the best style of jiu-jitsu. Whereas, you know, my philosophy has always been, you know, everyone should have a dynamic style, especially in the gym, because it just prepares you for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And whatever you like to do, like there's no, like obviously there's right and wrong ways about, you know, in jiu-jitsu, but
fundamentally, yeah.
but at the end of the day, like, if you want to train 10th Planet style jiu-jitsu, train 10th Planet style jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
If you want to train like Carlson Gracie style, like pressure passing, train that. Lapel guard, same thing. And I feel like, you know, what's been your guys' experience? Because I know you're both kind of really into, not the bad side of like YouTubing moves, but like really looking up stuff online and learning online and exploring jiu-jitsu.
I've at the start of like when I was starting jiu-jitsu, you go down rabbit holes and you're like, there's so much out here, I'm never going to get all this. So I got away from that for a long time and just kind of went the trial and error route. I was like, all right, I'm getting tapped every time I do this. I'm not going to do that anymore. Or like when I seem to be doing this, it seems to be working pretty well. So then like the trial and error I find has been a big philosophy that I've been using. But like we were talking about, we both kind of veer off to the no-gi like dominant type game, and I think we share a similar philosophy. Like if your roll is in the gi, we don't use a whole lot of the lapel grips. You know, we kind of stick to like wrist, collar ties, stuff like that. But where like the gym, you and Graham and Kelvy, I would say both your games or all of your games are probably more gi dominant. I would say.
I would say, yeah, definitely.
So, but what I found is that the stuff that we've been learning in class, like I may not directly apply it to my guard because I may not be using a whole lot of collar sleeve, delihiva type stuff, but it would be like when you're applying it to me and trying to implement it on me, I'm like, all right, I got to turn my knee out in delihiva.
Yeah.
You know, I got to break this grip right away.
That's huge.
Because in no-gi, you can kind of get away with like a collar tie maybe, but in the gi, like you really can't let a guy have a strong, dominant, deep grip on your collar.
Yeah, you get thrown.
You know, so it helps with your defense, I find, that way.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
I like to focus on like positions at certain points in time. It's like, all right, well, it's been a while since I really worked on my half guard or like explored. So I'm like, okay, let's go in, let's tweak my half butterfly, let's tweak the electric chair, let's tweak the underhook. Like as I advance through those, and then now in the gi, I'm loving playing a deep delihiva. And like I've been working Barambola with Graham.
Yeah, he's been
and,
super into it
I'm
recently.
loving that. Like
yeah,
I'm loving playing delihiva, reverse delihiva. Like so
Yep.
I get nothing bad to say with the geeks. I'm enjoying it a lot. Right
Yeah.
now, 'cause I put in so much time in like the early stages in no-gi with rubber guard and just feeling comfortable with where my no-gi game is now, and I am now. So it's like, all right, let's go to the gi game. Let's find some new avenues. Let's explore, and I'm loving it.
The gi's so important, man.
Yeah. It is, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny. I think one of my probably most repeated phrases when I'm talking to people, when I'm teaching, when they're asking me, things like, oh, do I grip here? Do I grip here? Right? For a given technique. I think probably my most repeated phrase is like, well, if it works for you, like figure out how to, how it works for you.
Trial and error.
Right?
Yeah.
Because especially for me, I'm flexible in weird ways, right? Like I've got hypermobile joints. My hips are weirdly flexible. My knees are weirdly flexible. So there's a lot of positions like that, that leg hook reversal I do from side control.
Yeah.
I specifically don't teach it to people because someone with weaker knees is
kind of an attribute based thing.
Absolutely. So for me, teaching jiu-jitsu has always been one of those things where I'm like, I'm giving you the technique the way I see it, and then I will help guide you along this road of figuring out how to work it in your game, right?
Yeah, everybody types different.
And one thing I want to ask is, you two are siblings, and like, we've said his name a couple times. Graham, one of, the coaches at Forza alongside myself and two brown belts, is my younger sibling. So I know for us, and I've talked about this before a lot, we can't really roll light. There's no light rolling thing. It's not even that, there's any bad blood or there's any like ill intentions. It's just when we roll, it turns into a competition, right? It turns into a war no matter what. Do you guys find when you roll, it's the same way? Just like, Andrew will hit a sweep on you, like, oh, I got to get him back now. And it'll just escalate instantly from there? Or do you find like...
My favorite rolls to watch are Andrew and Brandon. And
absolutely, yeah.
I think it's similar, but I've seen you and Graham roll. It is not the same.
No.
we tend to go a little savage.
It is definitely not the same.
We like to try a lot of new stuff on each other, I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah.
and like I feel like we'll pick each other and be like, all right, let's do a flow roll, and like it's never a flow roll.
Yeah.
Like we've had 15, 20-minute rolls that we said were gonna be like a flow roll, but then it ends up just like we're rolling. Like,
Yeah, I specifically avoid Graham when we do flow roll warm-ups because I know it won't work.
Yeah, but we do push each other, and it is competitive. Like you always want to, I don't say like get the better of the other guy. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like, we're in it to get better.
absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you wanna make your stuff work, but you also like, I don't know, and like all Graham's moves.
Yeah,
So you're,
exactly.
Same with us.
So, like,
It's funny, my
my
game, my number one goal in most roles is like, all right, get in top half guard, implement your game, look for the darts, look for your knee cut, look for your back step to the knee bar, to the back take, whatnot. And his primary game, I would say, is probably the bottom half guard. Plays that lockdown, plays like different type of things, you know what I mean?
Split.
Different banana split, different leg entries, going to like the half butterfly, calf slicer, go to the truck from there. So like we're kind of always working our A game against each other, but like if I see that he's gonna go do something, say he's gonna go for the banana split or something, I'm not like, all right, don't let that happen. I'm like, all right, let's go here, let's feel it out, let's see where I can base here, let's see how I can kind of avoid this. And I find that makes our rolls fun, competitive, but it also lets us try new stuff that like, if like you were talking about earlier, if like there's a newer white belt who's kind of, Brandon has a target on his back and it's going real hard, Brandon might want to kind of like, play it a little safe. But with me, I find you're like, I'm gonna try this new shit I've been working on.
Yeah, for sure. And like there's certain moves. Like I'll do it against you, I'll do it against Pat, I'll do it against Graham, but I won't do it against anyone a lower rank than me.
Yeah, a lot of leg lock stuff, definitely.
Yeah, out of respect, because it's like I don't know how comfortable you are, but I know you guys. We've rolled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Times, right? So I don't feel that with you guys. But like I'm not gonna go up there and well, first of all, I'm not even allowed to do calf slicers or anything.
Yeah.
I love them, but like I'm not gonna go up and calf slice a white belt.
Yeah. So that's actually a good question. What are your guys' opinions on like the whole leg lock rules in most gyms? Because for our gym, it's kind of on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Like, I heel hook people in the gi that I know train heel hooks.
Yeah.
Right? Like Brandon and I, we'll heel hook each other all the time. When I roll with you, Andrew, we'll do knee bars, pull holds, stuff like that. What do you guys think about this whole like, we're an IBJJF competition school, so we're gonna allow only straight ankle locks at white belt, blue belt, purple belt, and then only knee bars, calf slicers, bicep slicers, and toe holds at brown and black belt. Versus I think a lot more modern schools that are really adopting like once you have a decent knowledge of jiu-jitsu, just go, and if you want to heel hook, do it safely, catch and release, but do it. And gyms like that.
I don't know. I don't particularly agree with just adding like knee bars to holds and stuff at brown belt. I mean, that's a super advanced level, and it's kind of a basic move. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many knee bar entries, toe hold entries that like you can perfect at an early level and do it safely. But if you're only starting to do that at that level, like, I don't know. I think like I like Eddie's philosophy, and he said it for like he'll let a day one white belt heel hook.
Yeah.
Because if you learn to do it safely and you have safe training partners that also know how to do it safely, then there's no risk there. There's absolutely no risk.
I think ignorance is definitely the most dangerous thing.
Ego and ignorance gets people hurt 100%. Like me and you.
Yeah. You
get the heel and you're in saddle, like that's it. There's no extending your hips into the knee. There's no
exactly.
There's no none of that because it's over. But as soon as you start getting into that, that's when people get hurt. So I think that all submissions should be legal at an early level, but they should be taught safely, practiced safely against people who are knowledgeable.
I agree with everything you said, and it's like, I mean, if you're a gym that's going to focus mostly on competition, then sure, train to whatever the rules say you're going to be competing under for sure, just to develop good habits. But like if you're you're going to have guys who are doing no gi sub only, you're going to have guys doing gi, like I think it should be a case by case type thing. Like as long we'll roll and we'll mess around with different stuff, catch and release. That's all cool. You should do that, because if not, you're going to fall behind. It's kind of like, if you're training no gi but going to compete in the gi, like you're kind of going to fall behind. So if you're going to compete under a rule set that's allowing leg locks, like you kind of have to get on board one way or another.
Absolutely. And I think too, one thing that we do is, if we're doing a competition, like especially Graham and I, we roll a lot together. And if we're getting ready for a competition, like we went to, we did the Ontario Open this spring, and it is IBJJF rules. You can't, we couldn't reap, we couldn't do, knee bars, toe holds. We could only do straight ankle locks and wrist locks. So when we were getting ready for that, we only rolled with those rules. Yeah. But outside of that, all knee bar Graham, he'll toe hold me, whatever, right? And I think that's a good way to kind of bridge the gap there.
Yeah, that's right. For sure. Case by case, like
absolutely.
Depending on the tournaments coming up, depending on the skill level of the guys you're rolling with.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we've talked a lot about, gi and no gi, and then you guys have touched on it very briefly. For each of you, which is your favorite and why?
Mine is no gi. I like the pace, like Brandon mentioned earlier. I like the pace. I just find I have more fun with it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I like the pace. My favorite submission's no surprise. It's the Dars.
Yep.
Much more effective in no gi.
We actually have a question about that.
Yeah,
from Dave.
Okay. Yeah, due to less friction, and I just I've always had more fun in no gi. For whatever reason that is. Maybe it's because I'm not admitting that the gi's harder, and that could very, very well be the truth.
We had that discussion tonight, Cam and I, in the locker room. We were saying, like, man, the gi is a great equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, no gi is a great equalizer, where I'll roll with blue belts in no gi, and we'll be, they'll have a much higher chance of submitting me, positionally dominating me.
Yeah.
But then we'll toss the gi on, and it's no problem whatsoever.
Way different,
right?
I
feel like in the gi, when you're rolling with someone of a higher belt, it really shows. In the gi because they have so much more knowledge.
Big time. Big time.
And that's when you see that knowledge.
Yeah.
Because there's so many more techniques that involve the gi, right?
Find the gi. Yeah, I find the gi real good. Whether you prefer to compete in no gi or the gi, I find it's important to train both. I forget who said it or who the quote's by, but they said The gi, it's really good for training your defense because, there's way more friction. You get collar choke. There's more submissions available. And no gi, it's real good for practicing your control because you don't have those grips. You can't really tie a guy down as much. So there's definitely benefits to both, for sure.
Yeah. So what's your favorite, Brandon? I think I know the answer to this.
Like I said, I'm a big 10th Planet fan, so I gotta say, gi is what I prefer. But like I said before, I love gi, and I'm having a lot of fun with that now. But as far as competing goes, as far as my style goes, the speed, and just like the way my game goes, like I love no gi. It's frustrating sometimes. Like, it gets slippery and you lose a lot of stuff. Like
especially in the summer.
Yeah, you gotta be. But that's the thing. You gotta make sure that everything's locked down, everything's tight, because it only takes a small slip up and your 99% submission just went to 0 because you forgot to pinch your knee.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because then they're out, they slip out, and that's that. So
another reason I like no gi, it's far more comfortable. In the summer, you're wearing that gi. You got this.
I was just wearing my heavy gi tonight.
Yeah, it's got this 200-pound guy on you. He's pressure passing you, smothering you. Got an underhook, got a nasty crossface. Like you don't want to be wearing that gi, man. You want to be in a nice.
You don't have so much sweat on the mat.
Yeah, that's right.
You're slipping around. I know we had that the other week.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, you're in law enforcement. So this is a question to both of you. What do you think about this split in jiu-jitsu, this sport versus street split? Because I have my own opinions, but it's full disclosure, I've never been in a fight in my life, right, outside of training. So Andrew is someone who works in corrections, and Brandon is someone who I don't know if you've been in a fight before or not, but what are your guys' opinions on the whole like Gracie jiu-jitsu versus sport jiu-jitsu and things like that? And specifically, this part to Andrew, what do you think in jiu-jitsu what do you think of your training in jiu-jitsu has helped you the most with your career?
Man, honestly, I got into law enforcement because of jiu-jitsu. I always it gave me a confidence, not an ego, not an overconfidence, but it was like, all right, if something happens, I'm good. I'll be all right. It's not, if someone raps out with me, it's not going to be the first time I've ever experienced that. Where a lot of people, most people haven't been in a street fight, you know what I mean? When you're close enough to hug somebody and you're a jiu-jitsu purple belt and he's never trained, you basically do whatever you want. And I'll say this, for law enforcement people, if you're relying on the defensive tactics that most agencies are teaching, and that's your go-to, and you train that once a year just to brush up on your certification or whatever, you're in trouble, man. You're in big trouble.
We see videos all the time on YouTube and stuff, and Instagram, where officers and correction officers are just getting handled by.
I'm telling you, if you're in law enforcement or thinking about getting into law enforcement and you don't train, just know, you can lift your weights, it's cool, you can do your defensive tactics once a year. It is not enough, man. I'm telling you, man or woman, it is not enough. It's not enough.
And I think that's something too that Justin just hit on. You see a lot of videos, and a lot of officers and law enforcement, their first reaction is to pull their firearm.
Yeah.
And and you can tell by their body language, they're terrified.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to downplay being in a situation like that would be terrifying.
For sure.
Absolutely. But when you don't have that confidence to fall back on of, okay, worst case, this ends up in a scuffle, I'm good.
You should be hoping for that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's a positive. If it's hand to hand, you're good, man. If you train, get double underhooks and dump the guy.
Exactly.
And then you can go knee on belly. He's not gonna be able to move if you're any good at it. Call for backup. Handcuff the dude. If you want to apply a little joint lock, just man, screw off, stop. Do that. But don't freak out. If you've never grappled before and you start scuffling with a guy, adrenaline's high. The adrenaline dump you get from competition. Imagine being in a physical altercation with a maximum security inmate.
You never know.
Oh, yeah.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? Like, he might have a weapon.
Yeah.
You don't know, so your adrenaline's going to be super high, and you're going to get super tired.
Adrenaline
Yeah.
dump's gonna come.
That's
And
nothing.
Oh,
But
When your
if you-
adrenaline's high, you're immediately gonna go for life-threatening.
You rely on your instincts.
But if you train and it's not a surprise to you, like you end up in top side control or something like that, like you can chill, man. He's probably not going to be able to move. He's never trained or anything. You've been grappling for a while, like yeah.
You might be able to just subdue the guy.
Absolutely.
Like he's going to get tired way quicker than you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My advice, I'm a young officer. Obviously, I haven't been doing jiu-jitsu forever. I haven't been doing law enforcement forever. But I'm telling you right now, defensive tactics that they're teaching you is not enough. If you run into somebody who is bigger than you, stronger than you, or is smaller than you, weaker than you, but trains, you're in big, big trouble.
And that is very, very sound advice. Brandon is someone who's kind of more in my boat of not being in law enforcement, not being, neither of us end up in, neither of us, one, are voluntarily putting ourselves in situations like that, but we live in a very, very safe province of Canada and a very safe part of the province. So as someone, I know you train, mostly sport jiu-jitsu. What's your thoughts on sport versus the whole sport versus street kind of debate?
Well, like say, I've never been in a street fight. I'm a fairly calm, relaxed person.
Yeah. You're the last person ever think.
There's not many fights in electrical. Like that doesn't happen very often. But like Andrew was saying, like it's important to be able to handle yourself. Because I remember years ago, way before I even knew what martial arts really were, we've all seen it. I would say, never back down.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's a quote in the movie. It says everybody has their fight, and I truly believe that. And it might not be today, tomorrow, or 10 years down the road, but there will come time where something happens where one, you need to stick up for someone.
Yep.
Two, you need to stick up for yourself, or three, you need to stop something.
Absolutely.
And if you're able to stop the situation in non-violent, but also, I don't know how to say it, like, effective manner, I guess, that's super important. And if you're in if you're out and someone sucker punches you, like, okay, now we're in a totally different situation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, now it's self-defense. Like, you're a sport jiu-jitsu, but now you're in a street jiu-jitsu situation.
Yeah.
I think
So,
what you're getting at,
you need-
Brandon, is the whole humbling aspect and ego check.
Yeah.
There's no need.
That
There's no need to do. There's no need to go
Absolutely.
you
looking
don't
for
need to fight
fights.
someone.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of person. I'll
Yeah.
never do that. But if the time ever came, I know that I can handle myself, and if I need to stick up for someone, I have that too. But I'm not going out looking for a fight or looking to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Tim Kennedy. He's like former UFC fighter, jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's also a Green Beret in the Special Forces. And like he always says, like, be hard to kill. Like if you run into a dude, like he might be a black belt and you have no idea, but like if someone comes and tries you and then you turn out to be like Pat, like he might be walking around goofy looking in his glasses, going to work with his backpack on. If someone tries him, they're in a lot of trouble. You know what I mean?
I think that's the scariest part of training any martial art is you realize like the nerds and the like a lot like you meet so many people at tournaments and things like that. You're like, if you saw that guy on the street, you'd never think that he trained.
But be that, you know what I mean? Like, don't look for the fights. Obviously, avoid them at all costs. Run away, turn your eye to it if you can. But if it has to happen, like, be the one who gets to decide what happens.
Exactly.
Dump the dude.
And I think, a lot of people, specifically on the like the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, like, punch block defense kind of side, and even the people on the sports side who are like, oh, that's dumb, which I am mostly one of them. I think Chris Howder summed it up best, but I think what happens a lot of the time in these discussions that you see all the time of like, oh, training sport is completely useless in a self-defense situation, or training self-defense is completely useless. I think what happens a lot is people don't realize, like, I'm a sport guy.
Yeah.
I'm a guard puller.
Yeah.
I've literally never done a takedown in a tournament.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I still train takedowns. I love top position.
Yeah.
and I'm not going to go pull guard in a street fight.
Of course.
Right? Like,
you're not stupid.
I see this argument all the time. It's like, oh, if you train sport, you're going to pull guard in a street fight. And I'm like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to double leg the guy.
Right. And it's actually something that, Andrew, you and I were having this conversation, I think it was a while ago. It was the beginning of the spring, one of the last times you were down.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you, what, you've competed, and as a law enforcement officer, I asked you the same kind of similar question, right? Like, what do you think jiu-jitsu has done to help you as an officer? One thing that you said that has always stuck with me is the adrenaline dump not being an issue, because you're used to controlling your emotions in a really high stress situation.
Yeah.
And I said this I was on the 374 MMA podcast this weekend, and we were talking about competitions, and I really do think this is true. Your body can't tell a jiu-jitsu match in a tournament from a street fight, from an altercation. As far as your body's concerned, your fight or flight reflex is going off.
Yep.
It thinks you're getting into a knife fight no matter what. So being able to control that is so important. And is there anything since we've talked last time that that's kind of confirmed that for you, or like any differing opinions you have on that?
No, same thing, man. Like, I can't obviously disclose like different situations at work or not, but like, for example, I responded to something in a unit. We had to go hands-on. The guy got taken down, and I ended up, the situation was kind of over at the time, but we were still working on getting him handcuffed, etc. And so he was belly down, just kind of laying on the ground, and I was just kind of, my position at that point was just to control his legs, so he wasn't kicking and all that. And like, I just, kind of, if somebody was in turtle where you're kind of putting your knee over their legs so they can't roll for the knee bar or whatever, just kind of, you know what I mean? So it's just understanding, like, okay, this is immobilized now. Like, this is no longer a factor. Like, just physics, body mechanics.
You're not worried about him
yeah,
going for a knee bar.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this,
Yeah.
like, this is no longer a factor. Like, this is completely, don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like, if you're, trying to control a guy who's never done any sort of grappling, and you get that strong underhook and a crossface, like, chances are you're probably not gonna have to worry about too much scrambling going on.
If you can control someone around your own skill level with a crossface and an underhook,
you know what I mean?
Control the
so just
person.
understanding, like, when it's okay, when the potential for a scramble or like danger is, and then understanding, like, okay, this guy's, like, I'm good here.
Absolutely.
So just understanding that, not always being in the panic mode. Like, once you get to a position and you have certain control on a guy, being just understanding body mechanics, physics, like, understanding what is possible and what's not possible, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's like I was saying, Chris Howder said it best, and I'll try and remember the exact quote, but it was, he was teaching a seminar, and he said, someone asked him the question of street versus sport, and he said, because he's, he loves playing guard, but he's one of the dirty dozen black belts. Like, he was one of the first 12 black belts in North America.
Yeah.
Well, first 12 Americans to get their black belts, I should say. And he said, think street.
Yeah.
Think street, train sport, and practice the art. And I think that is one of the most concise ways of putting how you should train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that's really accurate.
Is remembering, at the end of the day, guard is a last resort in any kind of situation like that. But, obviously you have to train it, right? Like, you're training to take down and to submit trained individuals, not, I'm not worried about some guy doing a step over pass.
Yes, exactly.
Fight, right? So, I think...
Like, at the same time, like, if for whatever reason, alternate universe, you end up in a street fight, you end up in guard. Probably not going to stay there for very long.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if I've been training for 3 years and I can't stop myself from getting swept by you, like, it's probably not going to be long until you want to be on top. Like, you can kind of make that happen,
I think that's why it's important that people do develop a top game.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think I always try and get our guys, I always say, like, if you love guard, play guard. I mean, all I did is a white belt into a good chunk of my blue belt was play guard, and just hope that people, like, hope that I could submit them from guard, and then if I swept, I could catch a submission on the way out. Because I didn't really have a top game.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, what I try and teach you guys, teach everybody is, train all the guard you want, train all the sweeps and the transitions and the berimbolo and the inverting and everything. That's awesome. I love it. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But always remember in the back of your mind, put some time into takedowns. Put some time into passes. Put some time into top game. Because one, it just makes you a better grappler in the first place. But two, it's good to have, right? Like, you don't want to have never shot a double leg in your life and then have to go shoot a double leg against somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as I said, I have a Darce question here from Mr. Dave Delaney from our gym.
My man.
Shout out to Dave. Hurt again, unfortunately.
What did he do?
Hurt his neck.
Did he?
Yeah, so I think he's going to be back in a couple of weeks. But
shout out to the homie, man. Dave,
yeah, exactly.
Rest up, brother.
One of the best blue belts in the gym, I think is fair to say.
Your beard's wicked.
It is. Actually, he was talking about potentially getting into law enforcement at some point. He was like, man, I could keep my beard. That's great.
Yeah, man.
It's a great beard.
Yeah. So this question is about Darce chokes. So this is to both you guys. Andrew's a little more specialized in it, but I want both of your opinions. Bicep or forearm grip? And the reason he asked this is, and I have the same problem. I'm learning Darces, the last little bit. And, some people, obviously guys on the podcast can't see, there's no video, but, some people just grab their bicep here. Some people grab their forearm here or around. What do you guys think about that? Any other little Darce tips that you want to throw in?
I know we both finish it different ways.
Do we?
There you go. That's perfect.
We've had this conversation.
All right, how do you finish it?
So what I like to do is pretend that I'm almost going for like a rear naked choke. So when I swim, we're talking top half Darce here. So when I swim that in underneath and come and grab their head and suck it in.
Yeah.
Put the arm behind. I go bicep.
Yeah.
Then I crank. I bring this hand as high towards their shoulder as I can. Like I'm trying to put that rear choke behind their head. Because that then lifts this arm up that's underneath their neck, right? So I'm on the bicep, but you're lifting as you come up towards the shoulder. You're lifting it into their artery at the same time. That's always what I do.
Have you ever
bring it up?
Do you ever mess around with a forearm grip?
Never have.
Yeah.
Because how do you finish it, Andrew?
I've never been able to finish it with the forearm grip, man.
Yeah.
And I know Henner Grace does a ton of stuff. He's like, man, team forearm grip or whatever he says. I've never been able to get that, man, for whatever reason.
I think it might depend on how on your arms are.
Yeah,
that might be the case.
It's
too,
tough.
Yeah.
I just never feel like I have it there.
It just doesn't feel secure as tough.
Yeah. No, I definitely go bicep, for sure. I'm not necessarily super worried about. So there's no video, but so we'll say I have my bicep grip and my left hand is, the one that's squeezing kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not super like you kind of focus on bringing that high. I'm not super concerned about that. What I'm more concerned about is the hand that's grabbing my bicep that's under kind of their neck. I just kind of worry about where my wrist bone is in regards to their artery kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
And from there, like, their shoulder should do most of the work on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, you're choking.
Like we say, like, we like to put our chest pressure down on that arm that's across their center line.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to end up putting that.
Yeah. And, like, one of the number one defenses to the Darce is circle that arm out, too, right? Roll that shoulder out. So I feel like the more pressure you can put down on that top shoulder that you're crushing, it kind of limits their ability to kind of roll that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've noticed simple answer, bicep grip, but I would like to kind of mess around with that forearm grip.
Yeah.
Because with guys like real big shoulders or big neck,
it can be a little harder.
It's tough, and even in the gi, if you're rolling with a smaller guy, with just due to the friction, you may not get that bicep grip. So, no, if you can get the forearm grip and finish it, then that's probably easier to get.
Yeah. For anyone listening, wondering why there's a question about Darce chokes, both of them are very, very good at Darce chokes to the point where we've had them teach classes on it when they're here before, because it's something that none of the coaches really specialize in. I've hit one in 5.5 years of jiu-jitsu.
That's crazy.
Graham's hit a few, but he's been working on them specifically recently.
Yeah.
Just head and arm chokes in general. That actually segues a little bit. So everybody has a submission that for whatever reason just doesn't work for them.
That's right.
For me, jar strokes are one of them, but guillotines until purple belt.
Yeah.
It was a big thing for me. Until like a few months before I got my purple belt, I like never hit a guillotine in live training. And now like in no-gi, I can guillotine all the time. So what's kind of one, it doesn't have to be a submission. It can be a sweep or a pass or anything like that. What's your white whale, I guess? What's your one big thing in jiu-jitsu that you just can't, for whatever reason,
Man.
you've been taught it 1,000 times, but it just doesn't work?
Man, mine was Peruvian necktie for the longest time.
Okay.
But I'm just starting to get, after watching a couple videos, I'm starting to get it. But other than that, I would probably say, man, I don't know, that's tough. I'm trying to think.
Guillotine's definitely one of them for
I
me.
don't hit a lot of guillotines, but also like
I don't really go for much of them because that I never get them.
Yeah. I'd say I'm pretty bad at bow and arrow chokes for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know, like.
I gotta get Lucy to teach you those.
Yeah, like
she's so good at them.
Yeah, we've done them enough in class.
Yeah.
I should be like, I don't know what it is. But, like, I can do them good when we're drilling them, but when it comes to like a live roll, like I always screw something up.
For me, I talked about this with you the other day. Actually, if say you're in top half guard, and you have like your knee free, so you're going for the knee cut and it gets shut down, you can backstep, kind of play like the reverse top half. And there's that knee bar available.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
For whatever reason, I can never nail that knee bar, man.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's one of my favorite submissions.
Yeah, and it's right there. It's looking right in the eye. I can never get it.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that.
You know what I mean?
Really
like,
good submission.
It's good. It's effective enough of a submission that people are kind of going to defend it regardless because they kind of have to.
Yeah.
But, man, you might as well not against me because I can never get them.
Well, it's like I said to you the other day. It's if you get in that reverse top half position, you're giving them an ultimatum, right? They either open their legs up and you A, knee bar them, or B, pass their guard, or they keep their legs closed and you just like crush them with cross face pressure.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the latter, man. I'm hoping they don't make me go for that knee bar.
Yeah. That's I find like sliding into like random knee bars is one of the most fun things because people just don't expect it.
No, they look dope too, man. Like, yeah, I don't know, just can never get them.
Yeah. So this is going back on the list a little bit because I actually missed this. For both of you, what is your most and what is your least favorite thing about the BJJ community as a whole? Just the worldwide community, the whole thing. It's a tough question. I don't really have an answer to it too much. So
I'm gonna start with the least favorite.
Yeah, whichever one you want to start with.
I gotta think about that one. AJ Agazarm?
Yeah, I was gonna say mine's the trash talk personally.
I don't know.
Well, okay, mine's the whole Creonche attitude I think is really toxic.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's foolish, and we kind of touched on that before. Where it's like you should be able to train.
Yeah, here I'll give Andrew a little bit of time to think because this is a really tough question. Because I've thought about it a lot, and I think, like I just said, this whole Creonche attitude of like cross training is bad. You should have gym loyalty to your own gym. If you go train in another gym, don't give away the secrets of your gym.
That's right.
That whole thing I think is really stupid, and I'm glad it's really just kind of going away as modern jiu-jitsu kind of people come up and they're like, man, I'm a paying customer. If I want to go cross train, like I'm going to cross train at a gym in Halifax tomorrow evening, right?
That's the new school.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
As things.
Okay, that was your time, Andrew. Go ahead.
Man, I might get some flack for this. Guys who seem to only do leg locks.
Oh no, I agree with that.
I love leg locks, man.
Yeah, I'm on board.
I love them.
Yeah,
love them.
If you're gonna butt scoot and just.
I hate it.
Heels,
yeah.
Like, all right.
I find it like, you know how like some people were like, oh, I don't like watching gi jiu-jitsu because it's so slow and there's a lot of stalling.
Those people need to watch Marigali.
I find the same way with no-gi when people are just diving at legs.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. A lot of it may be ignorance of me just not understanding what's available, but at the same time, like, you're not going to try to pass the guard at all.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, if you're going to sit and just attack heels the whole time, that's one thing. But if you're going to start a roll standing up and pull a Marvin Castell and Eminari,
that's dope.
So bad,
for sure.
You don't even know what happened to them, and you finish a match in 30 seconds. That's totally different.
That's my dream right there for a no-gi competition, is to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. And like I said, I'm not, like, against leg locks. I like watching a lot of, like, I like watching a lot of pressure passing and different stuff. So I have a hard time watching just like leg locks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Or like people like you'll see on YouTube or Instagram, like people have like a locked in armbar, like all you need to do is one more thing, and then they'll find some like crazy transition, like a heel hook. It's like, man, it's like just take the arm, dude. I get it, it's hard, but like, it seems like they just find very crazy type like transitions that may not be super realistic.
But on the plus side, like the positives of the jiu-jitsu community, I would say how like a tight knit group it is and how supportive everyone is. Like if you look at, like we said earlier, all the different companies and brands that have been started just because of jiu-jitsu and how they've taken off. Like look at Kent.
Yeah, Ken Peters is a great example.
Kent, shout out to Kent, my boy. Like Kent's awesome, man. Like he started Supernatural Survival Gear in Sydney, Cape Breton, which essentially to a lot of people doesn't even exist in the world.
To a lot of Nova Scotian people, it doesn't exist.
It's going worldwide at a rapid rate, and his business is
he's a super good marketer too, man. Shout out to Ken.
Yeah. Like his YouTube channel's bumping, and his Instagram. Like if you guys have never heard of Kent Peters, look him up.
It's worth it.
Do it.
I've never talked to him I've never sat down and had a conversation with him, but I've talked to him at tournaments in the past, and he's always been a super nice dude.
He's the best.
Yeah.
Of course, like Kat with what he's doing with promotions.
Shout out to Kat.
Yeah, Kat Clark he's been doing. I remember I went to one of the first sub series when I was a white belt. Juliana was actually on it, and it blew me away that even back then when he was just starting it was so professional, right? Like everything was pretty much on as on time as you'd expect for a jiu-jitsu like super fight card, you know. And then especially like I have personal experience with that. I was on one of his recent cards. My experience of the back end of that, of like being there in the warm-up room and like interacting with him as a promoter, as someone who's, you know, an athlete competing for that promoter, was 110% positive. You know, he was really attentive, always like. One thing that I think is really underrated in, you know, the community in general, and it's just people, I find more and more are getting worse at this, is being able to respond to your messages quickly. Yeah. Right? Like there's like I'll talk to someone or I'll message someone and they'll take like days to get back to me, right? Whereas with Kat, it was always, if I had a question about the event, if I had a whatever, rule set, even the smallest question was always within like 20 minutes, half an hour, I had a response. He had an answer for me. So yeah, definitely shout out to
Kat's wicked,
awesome
man.
Guy.
It's funny you say that. It was months ago, but I just found out Ken Peters had a podcast.
Yep.
And I listened to his podcast at like 3:40 in the morning because I couldn't go to bed for whatever reason it was. And he responded to me at 3:45 in the morning after this was like a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You know,
I would say my favorite thing about the community, may not be my favorite thing, but something I really respect about it is like you can get a black belt in like Taekwondo or karate or whatever in X amount of years. I don't know what it is, maybe 3, 4, 5 or whatever, right? But like with jiu-jitsu, it's a long haul, man. Like you might, you know, 8 to 12 years, 10, you know, so it's like you're not just, you know, like they're not just handed out. Like you see a jiu-jitsu black belt, you know a lot about that guy or girl without even talking to him. Absolutely. He's been through it, man. He's trained for a long time. He's gotten beat up. He's gotten humbled. Yeah. He's persevered through it. He's probably dealt with injuries. He's dealt with balancing training and real life stuff. Like people, like you're not just gonna, you know, there's no Hicks and Gracie black belt that's not a black belt. You know, like he's legit. Yeah. You know, it's legit as it gets. So I always respected that. Like, there's no, and I find like if there was somebody like that, like a fake black belt or something, it's gonna get exposed pretty quick.
The community's so fast at that.
Yeah. You know, so like you can tell right away you roll with the guy. You're like, you can kind of get a feel within like a minute or two, like what level this guy's at.
So it doesn't take long.
Yeah, I've always liked that. Like, it's very respectful. Like, it's a respected art. If you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean?
That's right.
I think too, like, because I totally agree with that, and I think I know when people say that, one of the criticisms that pops up all the time is like, well, there's still asshole black belts.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, there's assholes in everything, right? Like, jiu-jitsu does a great job of weeding out like 99% of them.
Yeah.
But 99% of, just top of my head, like say there's a million people who do jiu-jitsu throughout the world, right?
Yeah.
99% of a million is still a lot of people that are assholes in the community, right?
Yeah. With that being said, I can't say I've met one person yet in over 3 years that I wouldn't invite to my house.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, everybody's super cool.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, the guy, I just lost a gold medal match in no-gi to this dude from Carlson, Montreal, Alpha. And, like, I spent the day after with him. We went out to eat and stuff.
Yeah.
He's one of the nicest, coolest people I ever
Alpha
met,
is
man.
really, really
you know what I mean? Like, if he lived around here, we'd be hanging all the time.
Yeah.
And, like, it's so common to just meet people that you click with.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, with the Nova Scotia, like the Maritime Jiu-Jitsu community, is we're really small.
Yeah.
And it's actually crazy, like, the big, I want to say, like, the big boom for the Nova Scotian community hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the last kind of big, like, huge, like, just total mind-boggling, like, promotions and the amount of black belts we've had in here in Nova Scotia was, I think, probably a little bit, the change was a little bit before you guys started training. As I remember, I was like a brand new white belt. I did my first competition, and there was, I'm trying to remember, maybe 1-2 black belts that were there at the tournament coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just it. Like, when you looked at tournament brackets, there wasn't black belt brackets. There wasn't brown belt brackets. There was black, brown, purple.
Yeah.
And you'd have like maybe a combined weight bracket of those 3 belts that had like 8 people in it.
Yeah.
Right. And now with, and most gyms didn't have black belts, right? Around here. Titans, and I guess at the time technically Forza as well, because we had CJ way back when. We had CJ Hollett still training with us. So we were like some of the only gyms with black belts. And now pretty much every gym has a black belt.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's funny. I actually think we're one of the outliers now who doesn't have a black belt. We have black belt level people, absolutely, but we don't have any actual ranked black belts in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that changed, like when I first started training, a black belt in this province was like a freaking unicorn.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I did get the chance to roll with them on occasion, but they were just, it was like, oh my God, I just rolled with a black belt. And now we have black belts coming in all the time to train with us when they come in town, right?
Yeah.
So to that question, and I know you guys haven't been training as long, from the time you started jiu-jitsu to right now, what do you think, like, have you seen that growth in the jiu-jitsu community up here? Like, in the Maritimes specifically? Like, how is it now compared to, like, when you first started, when you first competed?
I think it's constantly picking up. Like, well, like, say, I've only been training for, like, 2.5 years almost now, but since, like, the first tournament I went in to then you see the numbers we're getting at tournaments now, and, like, there's constantly new faces you're seeing. Because you always have that core group of guys that you compete against and you see at every single tournament. But then every tournament, there's just, like, all these new faces constantly, new white belts, new whoever. Like we had the Carlson guys come from Montreal. Like, they're new faces. They're not new to jiu-jitsu, but they're new faces, right? So as long as you have people traveling and coming to tournaments, like, that's constant growth to the community. So there's not that. It's all.
I find since I started, like, the gym would always have new people. They might last like a class. They might last a month. They might last a year, and they'll kind of give up or quit, or you just won't see them around. I find the people that have started have been sticking around a lot more. Like, you know what I mean? This is something I've noticed. Is it seems like we're just keeping a lot more people.
Yeah, I think too is people are getting into jiu-jitsu knowing more of what it is now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you'd walk down the street, you see this jiu-jitsu school, and before, I mean, I'm talking before even I started training. you'd walk down the street and you'd see this jiu-jitsu school and you go, oh, what's that, like kung fu?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like now people really know, oh, that's, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's the stuff they do on the ground in the UFC, and there's these televised events and all of this, right?
That's right.
So they're getting into it, kind of knowing more of what it is. I didn't know what it was when I started. I was like striking in Muay Thai, would see the guys run off in their gis, after class or before class, be like, that's dumb. I'm not doing that. I'm going to punch things.
Yeah, the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you roll with somebody good.
More
And you roll
natural
something good.
instinct,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's more like, as human beings, I think we're more inclined to just like naturally throw a punch than we are to like shoot a double and dump somebody, get an underhook. Like,
Yeah. It's all weird.
Wrestling's wrestling's pretty much the oldest like sport. I mean, like Greco-Roman is literally from ancient Greece.
yeah.
But I think absolutely right. Like since we were freaking like haired apes, I think punching things
Yeah,
is kind of in our DNA a lot more than grappling is. And you see that when guys come into the gym and train grappling for the first time, and they just look like a fish out of water. Just
it's
on the
crazy.
ground.
Like, it's crazy how poor people's balance is.
Oh yeah.
If they've like never like done it before, they'll just sweep themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
It's pretty nuts.
It's hard sometimes.
That takes a long time to get used to.
Yeah.
It's hard to train with those people sometimes because like I'll be working on a new sweep.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh wait, I was like halfway through the sweep and they're on the ground.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
They leg drag themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that happens a lot. For a
Yeah.
long time. It still
Absolutely.
happens,
What I got a question for the interviewer.
Yeah.
What things do you do outside of jiu-jitsu to like supplement your game? Like,
I'm really bad at this, by the way.
do you do like yoga? How often do you stretch? What's your diet like?
Yeah.
Strength and conditioning, YouTube, like what's kind of like when you're outside of the gym, maybe you're off on an injury and you can't really train, like what are some other things you do?
Before you say anything, that was literally out of Step Brothers, where they're sitting across the table.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
We are gonna interview you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with that. So as for diet, I call it the fat kid diet because basically I have pizza in the fridge right now. Actually, I just I eat healthy in that most of my staple meals are good.
Yeah.
Right. They're chicken, veggies, simple carbs, like rice, things like that. But if I come home from training and I'm like, man, I really want a Coke, I'll grab a Coke Zero, or I'll grab a chocolate bar, grab a bag of chips, something like that. So in terms of diet, I really I try and train more than I eat so that I can just
balance it
out.
Yeah.
And then coming up to a tournament, that's when I kind of really clean it up. In terms of stuff I do outside of jiu-jitsu, I'm really, really bad at doing outside of jiu-jitsu things.
How does Warcraft?
Yeah, exactly, right? Right. Most of what I do, like, I'm just getting back into running. Like, I just was up this morning running around. Strength and conditioning, like, lifting weights is always something that, for me, has been it's always boring for me, right? Like, I can go in the gym and I can roll for 4 hours, and I'll have a blast every single second of that. I can go lift weights, and by, like, 10 minutes in, I'm like, okay, I'm lifting inanimate objects. When do they fight back?
Yeah.
Like, There's, I still try and lift. I've gotten a lot more into stretching recently. After every class, after I run, and I find that's helping a lot for recovery. I've actually just started relatively recently. One of our guys at the gym, Shane, gave me some CBD balm.
Nice.
And I've been using that for recovery a lot recently. Man, I just used some on my knee after my run this morning. It is, anyone who's on the fence about trying CBD balm, try it. It is really, it works.
Yeah.
I can't recommend it.
I've got a foot in the door, like Brandon, you've got some, like from black belt CBD or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just haven't used it consistently enough to, I think, to feel the benefits. But no, I'm definitely curious about it for sure.
Yeah.
The thing with that is that the odor isn't there, like Tiger Balm or Rub 8535 isn't there.
My balm, like, because I like have the ointment, right? And it's like, it just smells like homeopathic. Like, if you've ever had like homeopathic ointment, it just smells like that. But like, once it dries on your skin, you don't smell it at all. But yeah, so that's that.
Yeah, no, Brandon, you missed it. I just asked Pat, like, some of the stuff that he did outside of training to kind of supplement, like, whether he did yoga, what was the diet like, strength and conditioning, that kind of stuff.
On that, I think the most important thing, because you had mentioned, like, YouTube and things like that, and, like, getting, doing your homework almost
Yeah.
when you're away from the gym. And I had one of our white belts ask me about this a couple weeks ago, and he was asking like, what should I do? Like, I can only make it to class so often. Like, what do I do to progress when I can't make it? What do I look on YouTube, right? Because I've been looking, he was saying like, I've been looking at the Gracie Gracie University stuff. And I said, whatever you do in class, like, so this is for white belts, and then I'll touch on like what I do personally as a purple belt. For white belts, I'd say that are looking to like using YouTube to supplement using instructionals, go to class, learn whatever the technique is. Like if you're doing a knee slice pass, learn that technique in class, and then go home and look up knee slice pass and look up like every variation of the knee slice pass.
Just get different details, different people.
Get different details, and then go to class the next day or the next week or whatever, and have like a set of 2, maybe 3 variations to try when you roll or to drill before or after class, and that way you'll find what works for you. Like I said earlier, when I'm teaching a move, it might work one way really well for me, but it might work another way for you. So if you look up all the different variations, you'll probably find something that works for you.
Right.
99% of jiu-jitsu works for 99% of people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what I do personally is I look up specific positions.
Right.
So right now I'm getting into worm guard the last like 3 weeks, and it's been amazing. I've frustrated the shit out of people, and it's great. No one wants to pass me standing anymore.
No.
That's the hard part about training worm guard is like you got to force the standing.
Yeah.
So all I did was I looked up 2 worm guard entries and 1 sweep. That's all I've been doing is just 2 worm guard entries and 1 sweep. And once I get to the point where I can do that on blue belts consistently, I'll look up another entry and another sweep.
Yeah.
And that's how I build a position up. It takes a long time, but you end up with a position that you're just so good at everywhere.
You have essentially
Right?
mastered.
You can get there, with worm guard, you can get there with De La Hiva. You can
Yeah.
get there with, just sit up guard. You can get there from X guard. So you find all of that.
That's something that I've been finding lately. I've been trying to play off my back a little bit more, and I've just kind of naturally fell into like single leg X and X guard and kind of playing around with that. But what I'm noticing is like you gotta have the entries. Like you can look up all the techniques once you're there, but the key against anybody any good is getting there. Like making them react a certain way, like fake this, but really you want the X guard entry or something like that. So I
things like you're doing it on the fly. Like you're almost anticipating what they're gonna do and shooting for that. Like
Yeah.
That's
Don't be afraid to positional spar.
No.
yeah.
Right? Like it's so important. Like I try and implement that in every class I teach.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it gives people a good opportunity. Like, say you're teaching spider guard, like, it gives you a really good chance to either work on your spider guard game or to work on passing the spider guard.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's nothing more frustrating than passing spider guards.
Yeah, with Graham,
I've recently learned some really special spider guard breaks that I never get caught in spider guard anymore.
Nice.
And by never, I mean against other purple belts, not Graham.
Yeah, that's right. That's a big win, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're almost an hour and a half now. I got like 1 or 2 more questions here for you guys before we close it up. It's already like 10 o'clock at night. So I got a question from Chris from Rogue Grappling, who I know I've talked to quite extensively. So his question was, where do you guys see Grapplers Against Violence going next? Your mission being to end the stigma around discussing mental health problems. What are you working on next, and what other things have you guys thought about doing in the future? So I know, you guys have talked a little bit about, some new products you're looking to do, some events you're looking to do. So I'll throw that to you guys.
Well, our first event, Rolling for a Reason, was a huge success.
Yeah.
That was...
What did we end up raising?
Over $3,000.
Over $3,000 and 90 pounds worth of food to feed Nova Scotia. So we do want to have one of those very soon, actually.
And consistently, I think. Like, kind of make it something that we
We're going to do it annually, but with the success of it, it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not, keep that going? Like, it's good for the community. It's good for the jiu-jitsu community. It's good for a lot of people. And then another thing that we talked about briefly, but I've I've been playing with it in my head for a while now is some sort of tournament, whether it's a big tournament or just several super fights or however we're going to go about it. But I've thought of layouts, and I do want to have it as sort of a submission only, EBI rules, overtime, stuff back, spider web, like something like that where points are not going to matter. Like, but that's in the early workings. We haven't figured out how.
For me, my main goal with the whole Grapplers Against Violence is to just create conversation. Like, me personally, I struggle with depression, and it's kind of something that is kind of hereditary in our family. Obviously, we lost our father to suicide in November. So for me, it's just kind of being willing to talk about it, and like, it's okay. I cry all the time, you know what I mean? Like, I have very, very bad days sometimes, and for me, it just helps to talk about it. Jiu-jitsu is a big help, and I think just kind of breaking the stigma, opening up conversation, and it's okay. Like, life's hard, man. A lot of the time life sucks, but you just have to be willing to talk about the struggle, you know, try to do positive things. Like, medication, like, I take medication for depression and anxiety and stuff, but man, that's only half the battle. Like I said, when I first started jiu-jitsu, it was kind of at a point where, like, I got the medication side of things figured out, but like, at the end of the day, once that's figured out and like you have some energy back, like, it is on you to start making life changes, you know? Like, it's they give you pills, but they're not magic. Like, you still have to try to get sunlight. You still have to eat healthy. You still have to try to have positive relationships in your life. Like, you have to try to get exercise. And it's really hard sometimes, but like, if life is important to you and you want to keep living and try to have a fruitful life and a positive life, like, you need to take some responsibility upon yourself and make these positive life changes. And it's hard to look in the mirror and be like, you know, I could sit in bed all day and feel bad for myself and just take this medication. But at the end of the day, man, like, you have to make some sacrifices. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But, you know, for anybody, like, if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, do it, man. Like, I'll talk to you on the phone. If I never met you, I'll cry with you, like, whatever, man. And I think, like, as men, it's important too to realize, like, you're no less of a man if you cry and have these bad thoughts and stuff. Like, you're just human. So for me, it's important. Like, I'm kind of going on a rant here, but it's something I'm really passionate about. Like,
absolutely,
you know what I mean? Like, you're human. Like, you're gonna have hard days, but for me, like I said again, it's just to create this conversation and willingness to talk that I think is hopefully contagious.
Absolutely, and I know, you know, from my own experiences. Again, I've never gone through anything even remotely close to you guys. You know, but from my own experiences dealing with, you know, relatively severe anxiety for a good chunk of my life, and being able to, you know, I don't think with a lot of mental illness, you get over it. You know, I think there's this kind of thought of like, oh, well, I'll just one day be over it completely, and it'll never be a thought. And I know, you know, when you talk to, you know, addicts, whether they're alcoholics, drug addicts, whatever, they say, like, every day is a struggle. Like, you never stop being an addict. You control it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think for me, you know, personally, with, you know, anxiety, it's not like jiu-jitsu and talking about it ever, like, man, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like, I
exactly.
still deal with that all the time. Like, new things for me are very, like, this podcast is actually a good example. I wanted to start this podcast when I was a new blue belt. And, you know, the only thought in my head whenever I think about starting it would be, you know, oh, I'm only a blue belt. Like, all the negative thoughts in your head, right? Yeah. No one's going to like listening to it, all these things. And it took me until now to say, you know what? I don't care if no one ever listens to this.
Yeah.
This is something I want to do. I'm going to do it.
100%, man.
Right. I'm doing it for myself. So I think that, you know, getting that message out there is really important, because I know, I spoke for myself. There's other guys at the gym. Yeah. Other guys I've spoke to outside of the gym that all say the same thing, in that whether it's you guys, whether it's a few years back, Kat ran a super fight event for, I think it was actually a bracket event in honor of Cody Glode. Yes. Who took his life a few years ago.
Yes,
he was an up and coming MMA fighter.
Yes, sir.
In the Maritimes. And, you know, I think it's such an important thing to be talking about and be raising awareness for. So that's why it's one of the big reasons, like, I wanted you guys as my first guest, because I feel like it's such an important thing.
For sure.
And I think it's like you said, right, as guys, my family's always been amazing about, you know what, you know, express your emotions.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry, all of that. But, you know, societal pressures, like, as a guy, like, you grow up watching TV,
For sure.
watching movies, like, reading all this stuff. You're like, but that's not what guys do.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not the societal norm. So I think really breaking that is very,
it's
very
important, man, for sure. And yeah, like you touched on too, man, like people will say like you're feeling down, just exercise. Like, yes, definitely exercise, but it's not just exercise, you know, like if you feel the need, or even if you want to, you know, if you want to talk to a psychologist, talk to psychologists, you know, like do anything you can to try to feel better. Like it's not one thing or the other. Like it's not just the pills, it's not just the exercise. Like you need a few different things. Like it's not ever gonna be one thing. And it's, you know, for me, I don't know if I'll ever be off pills. I hope one day, because just I don't think they're necessarily great for you. But you know, you have to have a balance in your life, and it's never ever gonna be just one thing that's gonna help.
Absolutely. And I think too, from my personal experience, you know, a lot of people say, you know, like jiu-jitsu cures everything, right? Which, man, jiu-jitsu helps so much.
Yeah.
Like I can honestly say, and I know from talking to you guys as well, like jiu-jitsu is one of those things where when you're on the mat and you're rolling with someone and you're trying as hard as you possibly can to not let them just dominate you and submit you, it can be just nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Right. I've had horrible days at work where, you know, just everything went wrong, nothing went right, and I go to the gym and I leave, I'm, you know, feeling so much better.
And I've had opposite days. Like I've had days where like my day wasn't too bad. I was kind of pumped to train, then I'll go train. I'll have a great training session. I'll be bawling my eyes out on the way home. Like it's just weird. Like I'll feel like physically my body is so drained that mentally I just got nothing left to like kind of have that shield up. Exactly. But man, there's nothing wrong with crying either.
No.
Question I have for you, Brandon, like me personally, like when I started jiu-jitsu, it helped a lot with my mental health. But where you're not necessarily diagnosed with mental illness, but what have you found with jiu-jitsu? Like what mental changes or lifestyle changes were really big for you since you've started?
Oh, it's been massive. Like